The champagne flute was sweating in my hand, the condensation beating against my palm like tiny, cold accusations. I was standing by the window, which is where I always end up at these things. It gives me a place to rest my gaze that isn't someone's face, and it lets me count the seconds until I can politely excuse myself. The view was of the city skyline, all ambition and steel, a perfect backdrop for my sister's ascension into a world that apparently had no room for me. Lydia, honestly, my sister, Chloe, chirped from behind me, her voice carrying that particular sing-song quality she reserves for public humiliation. I turned, a placid smile already fixed in place. She was flanked by her fiancé, Marcus, and a cluster of his friends, all of them radiating the easy, expensive confidence of people who had never had to calculate a tip on a takeout order. Chloe gestured vaguely in my direction, her diamond engagement ring catching the light like a tiny, self-satisfied star. "This is my sister, everyone. The one I told you about, who lives in that little studio and works from home." She made the air quotes with her fingers, and the group tittered on cue. Before I could offer a generic pleasantry, she leaned in, her voice dropping to a stage whisper that was decidedly not a whisper. "It's just so lovely to finally be with a family that's really going somewhere, you know? I mean, she's my sister and I love her, but she's never really amounted to much." She patted my arm with a condescending little tap. "It's okay, sweetie. We can't all be high flyers." The people around her, the hedge fund manager, the tech entrepreneur, the corporate lawyer, their eyes slid over me with the dismissive kindness one might afford a child's drawing. I was a piece of eccentric, slightly embarrassing furniture at the party of the year. My smile didn't waver. It never does. I just took a slow sip of my champagne, feeling the bubbles fizz against my tongue. I thought about the quarterly report I'd finalized that morning for Marcus's company. The one projecting a 37% increase in operational efficiency based on the restructuring plan I'd personally designed for them. The one Marcus had sent a gushing email about just last week, praising the brilliant, world-class consultants at the firm I'd retained. I said nothing. I just smiled and let the silence hang, a quiet fortress around me. Before I go on, tell me in the comments where you're watching from right now. I read every single one. The thing about being the quiet sister is that you get to see everything. You become invisible, a piece of the wallpaper, and people forget to filter themselves around you. I've been invisible my whole life. Chloe is the supernova, the one who demands attention with a laugh that's too loud and a smile that's too bright. I'm the shadow she casts, the one who holds her coat and listens to her problems and never, ever upstages her. It started when we were kids. Our parents weren't cruel, they were just dazzled. Chloe was the golden child, the one who got the lead in the school play, the one who brought home good grades without really trying. I was the quiet one, the bookish one, the one who was so mature for her age. Our mother used to pat my head and say, "Lydia will always be our little helper, won't you, darling?" And I was. I helped everyone. I helped Chloe with her homework. I helped our father organize his files. I helped our mother plan the dinner parties where Chloe would later dazzle the guests with a piano recital. I didn't mind it. Not really. I found a certain peace in the background, a quiet satisfaction in being the one who made things work. While Chloe was on stage, I was backstage, learning how the whole production ran. That's where I found my power. I went to a state school on a full scholarship. Chloe went to an expensive private university that our parents took out a second mortgage to afford. I worked 3 jobs to pay for my MBA. Chloe spent her summers finding herself in Europe. When I finally started my consulting firm, it was just me, a laptop, and a barely functional printer in my tiny, cramped studio. I named it Axiom Consulting. It sounded official. For the first year, I didn't even tell my family. They would have laughed. Or, worse, they would have patronized me. I built it from nothing, one client at a time. I specialized in operational inefficiencies. I'd go into a company, see the chaos they'd mistaken for culture, and quietly show them how to untangle the knots. I was ruthless, but in a polite way. I never yelled. I never made people feel stupid. I just presented the facts, clearly and calmly, and let them make the decision to change. It worked. It worked like a miracle. By the time Chloe met Marcus at a charity gala, my firm had a team of 12, a sleek office in a building that wasn't quite the skyline but was definitely on the way up, and an annual revenue that was more than Chloe's entire social circle made in a year. But I still lived in my studio. I didn't drive a flashy car. I wore the same simple, well-cut black dresses to every event. To Chloe, I was still the helper. And I let her think that.
Why?
I ask myself that sometimes late at night. The truth is, it was easier. Their dismissal of me was so complete, so absolute, that it had become a kind of invisibility cloak. I could work and build and succeed in total peace, because no one was watching. No one was expecting anything. And a part of me, the part that still loved my family, just wanted them to be happy. Why cause a fuss when it was all just a game to them? The party was held at a sprawling penthouse that belonged to one of Marcus's partners. It was the kind of place where the art was abstract and the furniture looked uncomfortable. The air was thick with the scent of expensive perfume and the low hum of self-congratulation. I wandered away from Chloe's little court and found a spot near the bar, nursing my champagne and watching the spectacle. Marcus was a good man. I knew that. He was handsome, affable, and clearly head over heels for Chloe. He had a kind of boyish enthusiasm that I found both endearing and exhausting. He also, as I knew from our professional correspondence, had a distinct lack of business acumen. He was a visionary, which in my line of work usually translates to disorganized. The company he worked for was a tech startup that had grown too fast. They were bleeding money and drowning in bad systems. When he'd send out a request for proposals, looking for a firm to fix things, I'd won the contract on the strength of our track record. I'd met with the board, with the CEO, with all of the senior partners, except Marcus. He was their head of innovation, a job that, as far as I could tell, involved a lot of brainstorming and very little follow-through. Our paths had never crossed. I was thinking about this, about the beautiful irony of it all, when the first escalation happened. Chloe found me again. She was clearly in her element, a glass of champagne in one hand and a canopy in the other. "You're being so quiet, LYD," she said, again at a volume designed to be overheard. "Come on, get involved. You can't just stand there like a lump all night." She leaned in, and her smile was brilliant, but her eyes were sharp. "Although I suppose it's a bit overwhelming for you. All these successful people. I bet you don't meet many of them in your little home office." She said home office the way other people might say pigeon coop. I felt a familiar, weary tightness in my chest. "I was just admiring the view," I said calmly. "The view?" She laughed, a tinkling, brittle sound. "Oh, look at you. You're so poetic. It's so you. Always the observer, never the participant." And speaking of participating, she took a sip of her champagne. "I was thinking about the wedding. You'll be my maid of honor, of course, because you're my sister. But don't worry about the speech. I was thinking you could just say a few words, something short and sweet, and then maybe you could help out with the caterer? You're so good at that sort of thing. The little details." I looked at her. The little details. That's all I was to her. A functional appliance. A caterer's assistant in a black dress. "Of course, Chloe," I said. "Whatever you need." Inside, something shifted. It was a small feeling, like a hairline fracture in a dam. It didn't break, not yet, but I could feel the pressure building behind it. I could feel the patience I'd worn for 32 years begin to fray. The memory came to me then unbidden. Another party, another dismissal. It was my college graduation. I'd earned my MBA with honors. I'd worked 3 jobs and still graduated top of my class. My parents had come, of course. Chloe had come too, but she'd spent most of the ceremony on her phone, texting pictures of herself to her friends. Afterwards, at the restaurant, my father had raised a glass. "To Lydia," he'd said, smiling. "Our little scholar." My mother had nodded, but then she'd looked over at Chloe, who was sulking because the restaurant didn't have a particular wine she liked. "And Chloe," she'd added, as if to balance the scales, "you must be so excited for your trip to Paris next month. It's going to be wonderful for you." The topic of conversation had shifted immediately. My achievement was forgotten. The toast was a footnote. I'd sat there in my new graduation gown, watching my family talk about Chloe's vacation plans. I'd felt a sharp, bright pang of loneliness that I'd had to swallow down with my champagne. Then there was the time I'd told Chloe I was starting my own business. It was before Axiom even had its name. I was just a frantic, hopeful mess of ideas and spreadsheets. I'd called her, excited, wanting to share. She'd listened for a few minutes, then cut me off. "Oh, honey, that sounds complicated," she'd said, the word complicated loaded with pity. "Are you sure you can handle that? It just seems like a lot. Have you thought about getting a real job? I could maybe ask Marcus's firm if they need a new admin assistant or something. You'd be perfect for that." I'd ended the call and cried on my bare mattress. But I didn't give up. I couldn't, because the truth was, this work was all I had. It was the only thing in my life that didn't treat me like a shadow. So I kept going. I built my firm, I hired my team, I grew my reputation. It was my secret garden, my fortress, my only source of true happiness. The second escalation came an hour later, during the champagne toast for the engaged couple. Marcus stood up, beaming, and tapped his glass. The room hushed. Everyone, he began, his voice full of warmth. "Thank you all for being here tonight to celebrate the start of our new lives. She's the sun, you know? She lights up my whole world." There was a chorus of ahs. Chloe preened, but then his tone shifted. "And I want to say, this is a significant milestone for me professionally, too. I've been working on a massive project at work, a total overhaul of our systems and structure. It's been the biggest challenge of my career." Chloe, next to him, gripped his arm, a proud smile on her face. "You've been working so hard, honey," she cooed. "I have," Marcus said. "But—" He paused, and a look of genuine awe came over his face. "I have to be honest, I was way out of my depth. I was terrified. And then, like a miracle, a team of consultants came in and just got it. A tiny firm, but brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. They swooped in, saw all the problems I'd been missing, and fixed it. In just 2 years, they've made our company more efficient than we ever dreamed. Our projections are through the roof." He raised his glass. "So, I want to raise a toast not just to Chloe, but to Axiom Consulting." The name hung in the air. He said it with such boyish enthusiasm, so pleased with himself for having the acumen to hire them. I saw the exact moment Chloe's smile flickered. The name was a splinter in her brain, something she couldn't quite process. She looked around the room, a faint, confused frown on her face. Axiom Consulting. It was right there, dangling in the ether. She'd heard me mention it once. I'd been talking on the phone, dealing with an emergency, and she'd overheard me say the name. She'd asked about it, and I'd mumbled that it was nothing, just a little side project. She'd let it go, dismissing it like she dismissed everything else about me. Now, the name was at her engagement party, on her fiancé's lips, being celebrated. She glanced over at me. I was watching her, still smiling, a calm look on my face. I raised my glass to her in a silent, private toast. Her frown deepened. The crowd clapped. I clapped too. The hairline fracture in the dam grew a little wider. The after-party dwindled down. Couples began to filter out, heading to the elevators, their expensive cars, their sanitized, successful lives. I was in the bathroom, washing my hands, when Chloe stormed in. The door banged shut, and her high heels clicked angrily on the marble floor. Her eyes were glittering with a dangerous, unhinged energy. "Lydia," she hissed. "What was that?" "What was what?" I asked, drying my hands with a monogrammed towel. "That." She jabbed a finger in the direction of the party. "Axiom Consulting. Why didn't you tell me?" "Tell you what, Chloe?" I said, keeping my voice mild. "Marcus's firm," she spat, her carefully applied lipstick looking slightly smeared. "It was a total overhaul." She mimicked his voice, her tone ugly with accusation. "Why didn't you say something? Why didn't you tell us? What, are you working for them? Are you the secretary to the consultants?" I met her gaze in the mirror. No, Chloe. I'm not a secretary. Then what? For God's sake, just tell me. You made me look like an idiot in there. My maid of honor, just standing there like a know-it-all lump, and my fiancé is going on about some company you work for? I took a breath. I could have told her. I could have just said the words. Axiom Consulting is mine. I founded it. I run it. Marcus's company was my client. I could have watched the patronizing, dismissive look on her face melt into shock, then horror, then the frantic, desperate recalculation of everything she thought she knew about me. But I didn't. That would have been too easy, too fast. And part of me was afraid, not of her anger, but of the shift. If I told her the truth, the whole dynamic would change. She wouldn't be the golden child anymore, and I would be something else entirely. I would be the threat. And I wasn't ready for that. I didn't want to be a threat. I just wanted to be left alone. I'm not working for them, I said, the truth carefully worded. I'm just familiar with the project. Her eyes narrowed. Familiar how? It's a small world, I said with a shrug. I know the people who run it. It was a lie of omission, and it was a pathetic one. I knew it, but it was easier than the full truth. I didn't have the energy for the battle it would provoke. Chloe stared at me, her expression a storm of suspicion and irritation. I could practically see the gears grinding in her head, trying to fit this new, inconvenient piece of information into the box she'd built for me. She hated it when the box didn't fit. It made her feel out of control. She let out a frustrated breath.
Fine.
I don't know what you're hiding, but I don't like it. Just keep out of my way at the wedding, okay? Just be my little helper like you're supposed to be. And with that, she was gone, leaving me alone in the silence. If you've ever had someone in your own family underestimate you like this, drop a comment. I want to hear your story too. I left the party soon after. I took an Uber home to my little studio. It was a lie, of course. My little studio was a 2-bedroom apartment in a restored warehouse downtown, with soaring ceilings and floor-to-ceiling windows and a kitchen that could have fed a small army. But I'd never corrected Chloe. I'd just let her believe what she wanted. The car ride was quiet, the city lights blurring by. I leaned my head against the cold glass and replayed the scene in my head. The look on Marcus's face as he extolled the virtues of my company. The frantic confusion in Chloe's eyes. The small, secret thrill it had given me. But then the feeling soured. It was replaced by a deep, profound weariness. Why was this my life? Why was my greatest joy a secret I had to keep from the people who were supposed to be my closest family? I thought about Chloe's "you're so good at that sort of thing" comment, the way she saw me as nothing more than a pair of hands for her catering needs. I thought about the way my parents always deferred to her, always made me feel like my achievements were quaint little curiosities compared to her great life. My phone buzzed. It was a text from Marcus. Lydia. Hey, so weird seeing you at the party. I didn't know you were Chloe's sister. Small world. Anyway, I was thinking about the report you did on supply chain logistics last month. It was a game changer. We've been implementing it. Just wanted to say thanks. I stared at the screen. He had no idea. He had no clue who he was actually thanking. I was Chloe's sister to him, the little helper, a familiar, almost invisible face at his engagement party. He had no idea that the woman he was texting was the one who signed the invoices. I typed back, "I'm glad it's working out for you, Marcus. It's a pleasure to be of service." I didn't tell him the truth either. I couldn't. Not like this. Not in a text. I fell asleep on my expensive couch, my mind a churning mess of guilt and resentment and a strange, restless energy. The hairline fracture was spreading. It was no longer a fissure. It was a network of tiny cracks, just waiting for the right moment to give way. The weeks leading up to the wedding were a parade of small humiliations. Chloe was a bridezilla, and I was her primary target. My designated role as maid of honor was a title in name only. The actual responsibilities were mostly about being her emotional punching bag. "Lydia, this is the dress fitting, and my colors are champagne and blush. Please, for the love of God, try to wear something that doesn't make you look so serious. You always dress like you're going to a funeral. You're bringing the cupcakes, right?" The ones from that little bakery I like. They're not cheap, but I thought you could handle it. And don't forget to pick up my dry cleaning. I have a meeting with the venue today. Can you call the florist? I just don't have the time. Tell them the peonies have to be white, not off-white. Are they deaf? I did it all. I made the calls, picked up the dry cleaning, ordered the cupcakes. I smiled, I nodded. I was the perfect little helper. And every time I did, I felt a little more of my resolve hardening. The dam was cracking, and the water was starting to seep through. I'd told myself for years that I was doing this for peace, for family unity, for the simple joy of not having to fight. But now, I was beginning to wonder if I was just a coward. I was so terrified of the fight, of the fallout, of losing the only family I had, even a family that treated me like a doormat, that I was willing to let them wipe their feet on me for the rest of my life. One particularly brutal incident came the week before the wedding. I was at Chloe's house, which was a sprawling suburban McMansion, helping her assemble the wedding favors. She was going on and on about a friend of Marcus's who was a venture capitalist and how she was going to network at her own wedding. She gestured at me, a crystal paperweight in her hand. Can you believe it? He's worth like $100 million. And he's single. Maybe I can set him up with someone. She looked me up and down, and a cruel smile played on her lips. Or maybe not. You're a bit of a lost cause, aren't you, LYD? You're almost 33, and you're still living in that shoebox. It's sad, really. She said it with a laugh, like it was a joke. But I could feel the intent behind it, the same intent she'd had her whole life, to make herself feel bigger by making me feel small. You haven't even had a real relationship in, what, years? No one wants a career girl who can't even afford a decent apartment. Marcus's friends wouldn't give you a second look. Something in me snapped. Not visibly. Not on the outside. But the hairline fracture gave way completely. The dam broke. It didn't explode outward. It just collapsed inward, leaving a cool, deep, quiet pool of water in its place. I stopped being the person who absorbed her barbs. I became the observer. I became the person who would, in just a few days, show them all the truth. I didn't respond to her jibe. I just continued to tie the little satin ribbons on the favors, my hands steady. I looked up at her and smiled. It was a new kind of smile. It was serene and patient and utterly unreachable. Chloe, I said, my voice calm. Do you ever think that maybe you don't know me as well as you think you do? She blinked, caught off guard by the question. What's that supposed to mean? Nothing, I said, returning my attention to the ribbon. Just something to think about. She stared at me, clearly unsettled. You're so weird, Lydia. You always have been. She turned away, dismissing me. Just finish those favors. And don't forget to pick up my dress tomorrow. Of course, I said. Stay with me, because what happens next is the part everyone in the comments always says they didn't see coming. And if you're new here, hit subscribe now so you don't miss how this ends. The wedding day arrived. It was a magnificent affair. A historic estate in the countryside, all rolling green lawns and a white marquee that seemed to go on forever. The flowers were a sea of white and blush, the champagne was flowing like water, and there were more designer labels in attendance than I'd ever seen. Chloe looked like a princess, of course. A gauzy, ridiculously expensive princess. The ceremony was beautiful, in that generic, Instagram-perfect way. I stood at the altar, my smile fixed. I was the discreet, reliable maid of honor, holding Chloe's bouquet and handing her the ring. The groom's best man, a man I didn't know, gave a speech about how Marcus had found a real diamond. And I was just there. The reception was in full swing when it happened. The best man made the traditional toast, and then Marcus stood up to speak again. He'd been drinking a little, and his cheeks were flushed. He was in high spirits. I just want to say one more thing, he said, tapping his glass. You know, I talked about Axiom Consulting at the engagement party, and I want to give them a proper shout-out now. They've been instrumental in my success, truly. In fact, he said, his eyes scanning the crowd, I'd love to know who's behind the magic. They're so discreet. Lydia, you said you knew them, didn't you? I've been trying to get the head of the firm to come to one of our meetings just to say thank you, but they're always too busy. Do you think you could get a message to them? Tell them their biggest fan is here. The room hushed slightly, everyone turning to look at me. I was still in my spot, sitting at the family table. My parents looked at me with vague confusion. Chloe was glaring at me with pure venom. The whole scene felt like a stage, and I was the actor who had finally been handed the right script. I looked at Marcus, then at Chloe, then at all the expectant faces. The secret I'd kept for so long felt heavy in my chest, like a stone I'd been carrying for years. It was time to put it down. I stood up. My chair scraped against the floor, a small, sharp sound in the quiet. I can tell you, I said. In fact, I can introduce you. I reached down into my purse and pulled out a simple white business card. I walked across the dance floor, my heels clicking on the hardwood, and I handed it to him. It was my card, the one I designed years ago. It had my name on it. Lydia Chen, founder and CEO. Marcus took the card. He looked at it. He read it. He looked at me. He read it again. The color drained from his face. You, he started, his voice a strange, strangled sound. You're her? The founder of Axiom? I smiled. Yes, Marcus. I'm the founder. And for the past 2 years, I've been the lead consultant on every major project your company has undertaken. The supply chain logistics report, the operational restructuring, the budget allocation model. I wrote them all. He stared at me, his mouth slightly agape. But we had meetings. I've talked to your team. I've never seen you there. I don't attend meetings, Marcus. I said, my voice firm, but calm. I run the firm. I'm the one who approves the strategies. I was the one who signed the retention contract. It was my signature on the document that saved your company millions. The room was completely silent. I could hear someone's champagne glass clinking, a small, tinny sound. My mother stood up, her face a mask of disbelief. Lydia?
What are you talking about?
You're a consultant. Chloe was on her feet too, her face white with fury. This is ridiculous. She's lying. She's just a... Look at him, Chloe, I said, gesturing to Marcus. He knows I'm not lying. He's looking at my card.
He knows the company.
He's read my reports. Marcus was just staring at me. The margins on the projections, the analysis of the workflow, it was all you? Yes, I said. It was all me. It was always me. My father, who had been silent, looked at me with a strange expression. It was wonder mixed with hurt. Why didn't you tell us, honey? Why didn't you say anything? I looked at him, and then at my mother, and then at Chloe. The silence in the room was absolute. I could feel the pressure of all those eyes on me, but for the first time, it didn't feel like a burden. It felt like the truth. It felt like victory. Because you never asked, I said simply. You never asked me what I did. You never asked me how I was doing. You assumed. All of you. I looked at Chloe. You assumed I was a failure because I didn't live the kind of life you thought was successful. You called me a little helper because you needed someone to feel small. And it was easier for me to let you think that, because your dismissal of me was so complete that it gave me the peace and quiet to build something real, something mine. I took a step closer to Chloe. My firm has a valuation of nearly 100 million, Chloe. I own my Shoebox. It's a penthouse. I have a team of 12 brilliant people who answer to me, and I am very, very good at what I do. Chloe's mouth opened and closed. She looked like a fish gasping for air. The face that had been so smug, so superior, was now a ruin of shock and horror. She was trying to process it, trying to shove me back into the box she'd built, but it was too late. I was too big for the box. Your engagement party, I said, my voice now dropping to a near whisper. Your joke about how I'd never amounted to much? Marcus's toast was about my company. The one you didn't even think was real. Marcus was pale. I'm so sorry, he said, his voice shaky. Lydia, I had no idea. Of course you didn't, I said. Because no one ever bothers to ask. I looked at Chloe again. I didn't tell you, because I didn't want to be a part of this. I didn't want the accolades. I didn't want the attention. I just wanted to be left alone. But I'm done being invisible. I'm done being the little helper. I'm done being someone you can dismiss to make yourself feel better. I turned to the room, to the crowd of strangers who were all watching me with varying degrees of shock and awe. Enjoy the wedding, I said. And then I walked out. Comment below with one word for how you're feeling right now. I want to see them all. I didn't go home. I walked out of the marquee and kept walking across the lawn, past the valet, out onto the quiet country road. My heels were starting to hurt, but I didn't care. I felt light. I felt like I'd shed a 100-pound coat I'd been wearing my entire life. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Calls from my mother. Texts from Chloe, a string of them, ranging from furious accusations, "How could you do this to me on my wedding day?" to desperate bargaining. "Lydia, please come back. We can talk about this." Marcus sent a message too, apologizing and asking if we could have a chat. I ignored them all. I turned my phone off and just walked. A car pulled up beside me. It was my father. He rolled down the window, his face pained. "Lydia," he said softly.
Please, get in.
"Let's just talk." I looked at him. He was my father. I loved him. I knew he didn't mean to be hurtful, not like Chloe. He was just oblivious. He'd spent his whole life thinking he was being fair by not taking sides, but he just ended up taking hers by default. "Dad," I said, "I'm not going to ruin this for you. I know you and Mom are proud of her. You should be. She's getting married to a good man. I'm happy for her." "Then why did you do that?" he asked, his voice breaking a little. "Why did you have to do that today?" I sighed. "Because I had to stop pretending," I said. "I had to stop being the person she thinks I am. I've been that person for 32 years. I can't be her anymore." He was quiet for a long time. Then he said, "What you said about your company. Is it true?" "Yes, Dad. It's true. I'm not a failure. I haven't been a failure for a long time." He nodded slowly. "I'm sorry," he said. "I didn't know." "No one did," I said. "That's the point." I got in the car. We drove in silence. He didn't try to convince me to go back. He didn't try to make it better. He just let me sit there, and that was the kindest thing he could have done. The aftermath was a messy, protracted affair. Chloe went through a period of complete denial. She called me a liar and a saboteur and accused me of trying to ruin her day. She demanded I send her proof of my claims, and when I sent her a link to my company's website, with my bio and my picture, and all the testimonies from her fiancé's own bosses, she stopped calling. I heard through my mother that she was furious and couldn't believe I'd deceived her. Marcus called me a week later. He was deeply apologetic. "I'm so embarrassed, Lydia," he said. "I can't believe I never connected the dots. I never really thought about it." "That's all right, Marcus," I said. "You weren't supposed to." I was very careful. She's having a hard time with this," he said carefully. "I imagine she is," I said. He hesitated. "I still don't know what to do. It's not your fault.
I don't know how to talk to her now.
She's so angry, and I feel like I'm in the middle." "You're not in the middle," I said. "You're just on the outside looking in. That's where I've been for a long time." Our parents had the hardest time. They were upset with Chloe for the way she'd treated me, but they were also uncomfortable with my success. It challenged their preconceived notions of me. They'd spent so long seeing me as the quiet, unassuming one that my new identity didn't fit. They were proud of me, I think, but they also felt guilty. Guilty for not seeing it. Guilty for not asking. My mother called me one night, her voice strained. "Lydia, I don't understand why you had to be so dramatic about it. You could have just told us. We would have understood." "Would you have, Mom?" I asked her. "Would you really?" "Because I tried. I told Chloe years ago I was starting a business. She told me to get a real job. And you both just nodded along. No one ever asked me a follow-up question. No one ever came to my office. No one ever called me just to see how I was doing. I was the forgotten daughter. The one you didn't have to worry about." "That's not true," she said, but her voice was weak. "It's true enough," I said. "It's the truth you're more comfortable with. Me being a failure was easier for you to handle. It required less effort." The guilt in her voice was almost palpable. It was the most honest conversation we'd ever had. Chloe and I didn't speak for 3 months. She sent me a lengthy email full of accusations, trying to make herself the victim again. She said I had humiliated her in front of everyone she knows, and that I'd ruined her relationship with Marcus. I didn't dignify it with a response. I had spent my whole life responding to her drama. I was done. It was Marcus who finally brought us back together. He was the one who reached out and asked if we could meet, just the three of us. I agreed because I was tired of the silent war. I was tired of carrying the weight of it. We met in a quiet cafe. Chloe looked thinner, paler. Her usual, effervescent confidence was gone. It was replaced by a sullen, cowed energy. She sat across from me, refusing to meet my gaze. "I'm sorry," she said finally, the words barely a whisper. "I'm sorry for how I treated you." It was the first time in my life I'd ever heard her apologize for anything. I looked at her. I could see her writhing with discomfort, and I realized that this apology was the hardest thing she'd ever had to do. "Why did you do it?" I asked her. "Why did you always have to make me feel small?" She shrugged, a helpless, pathetic gesture. "I don't know," she said. I was the favorite. I was the one everyone expected things from. And you were always just there, quiet, weird. It was easier to think you were a loser than to realize you were better than me." It was a brutal, honest admission. I didn't feel triumphant hearing it. I just felt sad. "I never wanted to be better than you, Chloe," I said. "I just wanted you to stop telling me I was worse." Marcus put his hand on Chloe's. He looked at me, his eyes apologetic. "I'm sorry too, Lydia. I should have seen it. I should have asked. We all should have. It's not your fault you're invisible. It's our fault for not looking." Things changed after that. Not completely. Chloe was still a bit of a narcissist, and she still occasionally made passive-aggressive comments about my impressive career to make herself feel better. But the dynamic had shifted. I was no longer the little helper. I was the sister she had to respect. It wasn't perfect. It was messy and awkward and sometimes painful. But it was real. And for the first time, I felt like I was actually part of the family, not just hovering at the edges of it. My relationship with my parents also changed. They finally started to see me as an adult, as someone who had made a success of her life. They stopped treating me like the child who needed to be looked after, and started treating me like the woman who could look after herself. It was a strange and wonderful thing. I still ran my firm. I still lived in my shoebox. I still wore my simple black dresses and kept a low profile, but I didn't do it out of invisibility anymore. I did it because that was the kind of person I was. Quiet, unassuming, and deeply, deeply powerful. In the end, I learned that the greatest power isn't in shouting or in flaunting your success for everyone to see. It's in knowing exactly what you're worth and being perfectly content to let the world underestimate you until the moment you decide to show them. I don't explain myself anymore. I don't apologize for my success, and I don't seek validation from people who never bothered to see me in the first place. My value isn't in their applause. It's in the quiet, unshakable fact of my own life, lived on my own terms. I used to think my family's love was conditional on me staying small and invisible. I used to think their happiness was more important than my truth. But I was wrong. The only person I had to prove anything to was myself. And I did. So, from my penthouse, in my little black dress, I raise my glass to you. To the people who never see you. To the ones who dismiss you. Let them. Their opinion of you is not your problem. It never was. Thank you for watching and for staying with me until the end. Where are you watching from right now? Let me know in the comments. And tell me, honestly, which part of this story hit you the hardest. Was it the moment she finally spoke up, or the quiet years of underestimation she endured beforehand? I love hearing from you. If you enjoyed this, please hit the subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss the next story. I have so many more to share with you. Until then, take care of yourself and remember, your value is not determined by anyone else's recognition.